it. I'm in London. I'm going to call John Lennon. So long story, I went over to John's and came in wearing the sheepskin coat, looking very and gave me and rolled this across the desk. So I told him I'd just come from Istanbul. And they probably thought I was a smuggler. Anyway, I was. So picked it up and smells it. And he goes, "Look, Yoko, a Turkish golf ball." So we smoked some. And that's when he played for me the Rock and Roll Revival record.
Oh,
And
wow.
it came on in Kim Fowley's voice with, "Ladies and gentlemen, Toronto, Brower Walker present the Plastic Ono Band." It heard my name on this record, and I
Wow.
smoked this hash. I thought I was going to fall over and faint. It was like, oh my God, I had to hold on to a table. Well,
Perfect.
okay, son, now how can I help you here? What are we going to talk? You wanted a word, didn't you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
We
got
need
a
a word
word.
for the podcast.
My word is home.
Home? Okay. What made
I'm
you
in a
choose
new
home?
home. I'm in a new home. That's good. And the film has found a home.
Nice.
So there's a lot of home going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I was excited when you reached back out to come back on the show because I was wanting to check in anyways and see how everything was going with the film. Because when we talked, I think I had watched a pre version that hadn't even made it out to theaters yet. Like you guys were just starting to take it around to the festival. So thank you for that honor to be able to watch it before it came out. And now everybody can go watch Revival 69 on Crave.
They can watch it on Crave or Apple TV. And if they were in the States, they could have watched it on the big screen in a number of theaters.
yeah.
It went to 20 different cities. I think it's just finishing up that run right now.
That's amazing. So how's the reaction been for you being sort of that you are one of the main characters in this documentary? Has it changed your interactions with people?
No, no. I've always been the same egotistical maniac who
Okay.
believes that I am God's gift to Canada.
Yeah.
And this film only confirms a small aspect of my historical imperative.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's pretty cool to be able to say that, you have a photo with
I
you
don't
and
know.
John Lennon on Google Images.
Yeah, yeah, that is kind of cool.
That's a cool thing to have on the resume.
Yeah, well, I don't have a resume. I have a sheet. They call it a sheet. Cops say, "Does he have a sheet?" Yeah, he's got a sheet. You know what that means, Johnny? That means if he got a record.
Oh, a record.
He
Okay.
got a sheet. Yeah, that's my resume. Wanted in 3 countries, but never all at the same time. Um, so home. Where are you going to go with home? Tell me what that means to you.
Well, you're flipping the question on me. Home for me is like when you really when you start hanging up pictures of family on the wall, that can make any place a home, I think, no matter where you are. It always feels like this apartment that I was in, we didn't even really decorate or hang up any photos for like 2 years, and it just felt like an Airbnb. Even though we were paying rent and living here, it didn't feel like a home until we fully like personalized it and made it ours. So I've always been the type of person where I can live pretty much anywhere and make it feel like a home. But are you
Good.
excited to be back in Canada?
I'm actually in a near Coburg. So
Nice.
I'm back in Canada, but I could be in Kansas for all I know. When I drive down the country road, I see cornfields. Um, and it's about 10 minutes on the 401 down the road to Coburg. And if you want to go to Toronto and you have your head screwed on straight, you get on the train
Yeah.
and land in downtown Toronto. I have driven in there a couple of times. It has been a challenge. Um, but knowing Toronto as well as I do, I've been able to negotiate some, back streets and back roads. And of course, having years of fleeing the police and other people, I've also known alleys that, other people didn't even know exist.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, funnily enough, quick little story, during the Heatwave Festival of 1980, which, by the way, did I ever send you a copy of that book?
No, but I'll share the link right here for people watching on YouTube. I was gonna ask you about the book too. So it's Count Whiffenstein Meets the Ugly Canadians, the Heatwave Trilogy, Book One. That
Book
link will
one.
be in the description down below. This was the link
Wow.
that you had sent to me.
That's it, exactly. Well, I'm writing book two now. I have about a 40-page treatment finished, and then I'll build it from there up to about the same 125 pages. So just a quick little alley story. After Heatwave, I had a warehouse downtown, the second floor of the Canary Restaurant building. It's still there, by the way. It's a historical landmark building, although it's surrounded by condos. Um, as is everything in Toronto.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
even they're putting condos on top of larger dog houses now. But I had a musician guy call me, and he said, "Listen, man, I'm really in trouble. I need some help. I got a guy with me. We just got him out of the hospital. He was in a shooting. We got a friend of ours that was a nurse to give the cop guarding him some coffee that had some knockout shit in it. And I got him in the car, and I need a hideout in Toronto. He was coming from Windsor. So can I come to your place?" I go, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So in comes this guy bandaged up. He's got a bullet hole in him. The bullet's out. He's
Jeez.
on meds and his buddy's there, but he was very wanted. So I had Vladimir Rogov and his two musician friends rehearsing in my warehouse at the time. And these guys were staying there as well across the hall. We would bust into the neighbor's thing at night and let them sleep there. And then early in the morning, get them out. But this one guy was calling his mom. And of course, the cops had his mom phone tapped. So one night we went out for a drive. They had a girl with them. There were four of us. And all of a sudden, roaring up behind us is an unmarked car. And the guy looks out the back and he goes, "Man, it's the cops. Go, go." So I'm like, "Okay, go." So off we go. And I go down this alley. And it looks like when you're going down it, I'm going 50, 60 miles an hour down this alley beside these big warehouses, that it looks like you're going to crash right into the wall at the end. And so the cops backed off completely, slow down, waiting to see us crash into the wall. But of course, I knew that it turned left and there was
Mhm.
another alley that led out onto Front Street. So we roared back to the place, just jumped out of the car, jumped in, locked the door, and of course they called the SWAT team. Now there was an agent that was coming down there to look at Vladimir's band. He said when he pulled up, the SWAT team van was just emptying people out, and they smashed the door open with the sledgehammer
Wow,
and
they're
came
making some
charging up the
hardcore
stairs. Now,
music.
yeah, now in the in the warehouse, there was a big fire door and everything. And of course, they have a megaphone saying special weapons and tactics, open the door.
Yeah.
So I put my three friends, my friend and his two friends, in the freight elevator, push the button, put them up to the top floor and say, "Hide in amongst the rags," because it was a rag building. The owners had rags. So I went into Vladimir and I said, "Listen, you guys, you got to do me a favor. The cops are going to come in now. I need you three to say you were with me in the car and we went out to get some coffees and I got scared and thought it was like somebody trying to rob us. And that's why we took off." So they're
Hmm.
like, "All right, yeah, okay, sure, man." So of course we open the door and a rifle comes in with a mirror on it,
Yeah, yeah.
like that's how it works. And like they're out, everybody out, hands up. So we come out and they lay us down on the floor. And the detectives now come up that were in the car. And one of them goes, "Who was driving that fucking car?" Excuse my French. You can bleep that.
Yeah, no, it's
Uh,
all good.
who,
Leave
who
it
was driving that car? And I go, "I was." And this guy kicked me from my ankles all the way up the side of my body. He had running shoes on, but he wanted to let me
Jeez.
know, "You pissed me off so
Yeah,
much."
yeah.
And I was going, "I thought you guys were gang members or something. You're going to rob us. I don't know. I didn't know you were cops. You didn't have a siren. Nothing had it." And the SWAT guys are looking at the cops like, "We came here for this, for a bunch of musicians, well, that you didn't let them know you were cops
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
took off on you." So now the cops are embarrassed. Anyway, they sat there for maybe about an hour with us in the warehouse, just waiting, trying to figure out what the was going on. Finally, they split. So at about 7 in the morning, I had to get these guys down off the top floor, next floor up. And the Canary restaurant, of course, opened at 7. So now all kinds of truck drivers and everybody's coming in. So we come down in the freight elevator into the back, go into the kitchen of the restaurant, and I feed them out like one at a time. And there's all kinds of traffic and people on the street now, and they got away.
Wow. Oh, what a story.
That's the end of Heatwave. That'll be in the end of the third book called Day of Show and Beyond.
Oh, geez. Now you have to see what like precedes that. Like what's coming up in the first two books before that. But
Well, I
what?
got to get you this book. I'm going to get a copy
Yeah.
sent down to you. You'll get me your address later,
Yeah.
and I will get you a copy. It's a very short, fast read. I've had people that say they started it on a plane, and the next thing you know, like they were like 2 pages away, and the stewardess is going, "Sir, we need to get you off the plane." No, I got 2 more pages of this book. Yeah, I'll be. Give me 2 minutes.
I'll be
Yeah, it's a
fine.
good book. I don't
Yeah,
mind
no.
saying so. It's a
Nice.
good book.
No, no, I'm excited for sure. So, out of all of the like, you've had many, many experiences throughout your life in terms of the music industry and the rock and roll industry. What was it about the Heatwave Festival that inspired sort of this book? And is it based on true events, or is it like fictionalized moments with some true connecting events? Like, really explain the book if for the listeners.
Okay, everything I write is word for word what happened.
Okay.
There's no creativeness there. Yeah, I have books that I'm working on, that are creative and that are different stories, but nothing to do with any of the events that I've ever produced.
Mm.
Um, I just tell it the way it is. I'm not Stephen King. I can't make up that kind of stuff. But you are getting, what happened. A lot of time I use like third person writing. I'll write as if the writer is not John Brower, but he's writing about John Brower. But all the things that are happening in the book that John Brower is going through, or all his dialogue, or everything is accurate.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
interesting way. That's a good way to do it. And does that sort of help with like what made you choose that? Was that just a natural thing that happened when you started writing it? You thought I'm going to
Yeah.
write it from that perspective of
Yes.
someone
Yeah.
narrating my own life?
Yeah. I did not want a book that in the end, somebody told me there's 1,177 words I in the book.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You
Okay.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's much easier to be like a fly in the wall and telling the story of what you saw and reciting the dialogue and all of that. And so that's the way I have chosen to write, and more than likely will write in terms of all these rock and roll stories. Now, another thing I wanted to share with you. When we talked last time, had I done my TikTok channel?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We promoted
Okay.
it. And I
Yeah,
made
good.
sure when I did some promos for the podcast, I was tagging the rock and roll
Tagging.
stories, so that like people will be linked to your account when they watch one of my videos. You can share
Beautiful,
that here
because
too.
I've gone back on there and started doing more
Yeah, I
stories.
saw that. You got a lot of consistent stories. It's good. It's a good idea too to like bulk film like this and just split it up into sections.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I needed to get the algorithm going. If I'd known Al Gore, I would have called him to do it for me. But
I love that
I
joke.
lost touch with him when he left office.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, the movie's found a home. It's interesting. I had a guy come up to me on the street the other day, and he's probably in his late 90s, and he told me he recognized me from the film and that he brought his kids to the show. And so I kind of realized that the movie's finding a home, nursing homes, retirement homes. Um, and so
Uh,
we're really cleaning up there. We've
the
got
nursing
that
home's
mark.
gonna be badass in about 10 years. It's just gonna be a bunch of long silvered haired dudes in
Yeah,
Metallica
yeah,
shirts. And
yeah. And there's going to be a lot of weed smoked in there,
yeah,
as
yeah,
Edjo
yeah.
said. There was a lot
Chlamydia
of weed
rates through the
smoked. Yeah,
roof. No?
right. No, but they had a very interesting thing with the film in Japan. It played in theaters there for several weeks, and the first weekend was very senior people, and the next weekend it was almost all young people. The vibe, the word came out, the word spread.
Hmm.
I really feel that Alice Cooper has done um, more than anyone else to drive the attention to this film, because he is the biggest rock star still standing
Yeah.
from the film. And of course, it's the chicken incident, which, he and I did a fan fest about 10 years ago together. And as he said, And it was true. All anybody wants to know is about the chicken incident. That it doesn't matter if he's in Japan,
Yeah.
Australia,
Because it's
or
unbelievable. It's like it feels like a folk, like a tale at this point, where you're like, oh, you made that up,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
gets to point to this documentary and be like, no, it's right there.
It's right there, and it's so well done, and the
Yeah.
footage was so amazing from Penny Baker. But come to tell the story of Alice is, in the beginning when Ron approached Shep, Gordon Shep said, look, Alice is retired. He plays golf. I really don't know, that I can get him to, that because Ron wanted him to come to Toronto and walk around the stadium and all that. It was like, no,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. So then when Pennybaker, showed Ron all the footage he had, Ron realized that he has footage of Alice backing up Gene Vincent. So he
Mm.
called Shep and told him that. Shep called him back in an hour and said, "You have footage of Alice with Gene Vincent? Okay, we're in."
Yeah,
That was
because
that was what
it's
they
such a
really
good
were
bargaining
excited.
chip, you know?
Yeah. Well, nobody had it. Nobody knew they had it
Yeah.
until Ron Chapman, the director, amazingly. I like to think of him as an archaeologist because he searched and cross coordinated everything down to Pennybaker and then
Yeah.
got Pennybaker on board and got the keys to Iron Mountain and found all these cartons of incredible, many unprocessed reels of film.
Yeah, truly. And like he was almost like an investigator in a way of the way that he had to keep going at Anthony Fawcett, keep searching for Anthony Fawcett, first of all, and then to like have to convince him to want to talk about something that he said he doesn't want to talk about anymore, or that he feels like he shouldn't talk about. And then during the filming, like having to like get a little bit of wine going so that he would loosen up a little bit and like feel more free to talk about these stories and really like get that archival footage. Like that's not easy to, sort
No.
of have that charisma with someone where they trust you as well. And that was his word for his podcast too, was trust, I believe. Because he's like, as a director, you need your subject to trust like what you're doing when you're asking them questions, when you're filming them.
Well, the funniest thing to me was when he showed up at the door um, and introduced himself. Anthony Fawcett said, "Oh, I thought it was Ron Howard." Now, Ron Howard, of course,
No.
is a world famous director. Anthony Fawcett must have had a few glasses of wine when he was on the
Yeah,
phone with
yeah.
Ron Chapman, but Ron managed to get past that and
That's
get
so
his foot
funny.
in the door and get in and charm Anthony. And as directors need to do at times, is their
Hmm.
job is charming people to get the story out.
Wow. And how what made you want to come back to Canada from, because you were living in California, right?
I was. I got an offer on a buyout on the rent controlled apartment that I had for 18 years. And over the course of those years, I've had big dogs, and the two current big dogs I have were getting like way too big for
Mm.
two dogs and two cats in a one-bedroom apartment. I mean, I
Yes.
was living at the dog park. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it. Like
yeah, for
people,
sure.
people ask me, are you sleeping here? Do you live here? I mean, it was like, yeah. So I got an opportunity to do something very special, and that was to come to Canada and negotiate the sale of a very rare manuscript. And so I wanted to live outside the city because with the dogs, it's crazy. And everybody was telling me, you don't want to live in Toronto. You have no idea what
No.
it's like. I hadn't
Oh.
been there in 5 years. And I'm going, well, what's wrong with it? I love Toronto. No, it's not the same.
It's
So
crazy,
anyway,
you know. Yeah.
I found a lot of people I kind of had heard of and knew were living down here in Northumberland County
Hmm.
and in Cobourg, a sweet little town. And also the train goes direct from Toronto to Cobourg on the way to Ottawa, on the way to Montreal. So it's a stop on the train. So my friend here, a realtor, coincidentally had lived in Venice. That felt good that I had a realtor now that I knew in Cobourg. And she shopped around and found a few places that might have worked, but they wouldn't take the dogs. It was like, no, no, no,
Mm.
no. A small dog, yes. A 90-pound and an 80-pound dog, no, not happening.
What kind of
So
dogs
then
do you have?
she found this place about 10 miles out of town that had been an Airbnb. and it was 7 acres, in a big house, but it was the same price as it would be a two-bedroom apartment in LA.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, okay. So she said, would you consider like being 10 miles outside of Coburg? And I said, well, I'm 2,500 miles outside of Coburg now. What's another 10?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If they'll take the dogs,
Yeah, yeah.
and the place had sat empty for 6 months. So they were pretty excited to get somebody that was interested in it. And I think the guy said to her, his agent said, he can have a giraffe if he wants. Okay.
Just take the friggin' house.
Take the house. Okay.
Someone
So
take
yes,
care of
it's
it.
a 10-minute drive into Coburg. But that's fine. I mean, it's what I works for me.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And if you want to come up here and visit Johnny, it's 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms,
Nice.
5,000 square feet. I live here
Come
alone.
up and host a party.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll go and stay in one of the other bedrooms just to feel what it would be like to be a guest here.
I always thought about that would be I saw someone say this idea and I was like, man, that'd be so crazy if you had like a house like that you had an extra room, would be to go into an extra room and redesign it like a childhood room that you really remember. And so it's like you could literally like visit, maybe you were a big baseball fan as a kid, so you have like baseball banners and different stuff and like a similar bed and everything that you have, like kind of theme the room to something from your own memory. I'm like, I think that's a fun idea.
Yeah, that's a fun idea. It kind of reminds me, I was just looking at some stuff on YouTube, and I was looking at some Eddie Murphy stuff, very funny guy. And he was talking about during the first year of Saturday Night Live, he used to take the train uh, from a certain place where he'd park his car at one of those places where you park your car and then you take the train into the city because you can't park your car in the city.
Uh-huh.
And because Letterman was saying there was kind of a story about something, a little criminal activity there. And Eddie goes, yeah, I came back to the parking lot and I had a great car and I had nice hubcaps and somebody stole them. So he said, I walked around the lot and I saw another guy that had some nice hubcaps. So I took his. So he said, here I am, Eddie Murphy. I'm on Saturday Night Live as the first year and I got a crowbar out and I'm popping hubcaps. Well,
Uh, that's like
um,
Chris
I
Rock.
had a,
Chris
I
Rock said he
had
bought a
a,
house in New
yeah,
Jersey,
yeah.
just so that he could feel rich.
Yeah, well, he eventually became rich, but that's a
Yeah,
nice way to ease yourself into it.
yeah.
So, I went to Upper Canada College in Toronto, and I was certainly there on trust funds. I was not one of the Eatons or Simpsons or
Hmm.
May companies or whoever else went there. I met a lot of great guys there, but there was also a lot of them that lived in houses the size of the apartment building I lived in.
Jeez.
So my mom had a car, and one day a buddy of mine were cruising around and we saw some hubcaps and we said, these would look good on your mom's car. Well, we popped them. And it became an addictive thing. And I started selling hubcaps to guys in my school to put on their mom's car.
No
And
way.
I would always have a couple of sets of hubcaps in my locker. I remember at the 40th anniversary, Peter Saloom got up and he said, well, we knew John Brower was going to be successful. He was the only guy running a business out of his locker. So one day, my mom comes to me and she goes, Johnny, I was down in the basement and I went into the locker and it's like filled with hubcaps because I always had about 10 sets in there or more.
Yeah,
Because it became addictive. I mean, it did. Some people become kleptomaniac. I became a klepto hubcap.
yeah.
So I went down, and of course, I came back up and I said, Mom, listen, one of the other people in the building, I just talked to them and they thought that was their locker and they put all that stuff. They're in the car business. So I said, they've got a lot of stuff in their locker. I said they could just leave that stuff in there for now. We'll get it all moved soon. We don't really need the space, right? She goes, oh, that's nice, Johnny. That's very nice of you. Okay, that's fine. So gradually I started liquidating hubcaps because
Yeah,
I didn't think
yeah.
that story was going to fly.
Without collecting
Um,
more.
yeah, collecting more. Yeah, no, that became an experience for a couple of years that I got out of my system.
Nice.
I mean, it could have led to bank robberies. Who knows?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
That's the worst. Okay, you could have been dealing drugs. I'm sure it could have been much worse than
Oh no,
hubcaps.
we were making way more money than people selling nickel bags in Yorkville. No, no, no.
Yeah, no doubt. It's all in the auto industry there. Um,
Absolutely.
Now, for your book, I had a question too. For the first book, I know you're working on the second one right now, and I'm sure you're already mapping out in your head what the third one is going to be. Was there any stories that you were going to put in your first book that you ended up leaving out for whatever reason? Maybe it didn't tie with the story, or um, didn't
No,
move the plot
no.
along?
There is a story in the second book that I'm gonna have to leave out. Because it was too intense. It involved guns and like just having to just get something sorted out really quickly, and it was like the show was going to be over if it didn't get sorted out.
Mm,
um and so looking back on it, it wasn't me initiating it, but I had to go along with it. And it's not something that I'm very grateful it went the way it was and it was over real quick and everything got sorted out. But it's really too intense to have memorialized in a book. It
mm,
not it's not going to move the story forward. It's not going to build character.
mm.
If anything, it might cost me dealing with some investors in the future. They may go, wait a minute, no, don't deal with him. Did you read that book? Holy shit. The check was
Yeah.
bad. Oh my God.
Uh,
Anyway, yeah, no, that's going to be left out. And also in my first book, I do have something, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read you the preface to the book.
yeah, yeah, for sure. By
One
all
one
means.
little page here that gives you a little bit of insight into the question that you just asked. And I think that's important, and you'll get a treat when it goes, events described in this story are faithful to my memory, which was an excellent recall at the time of writing. I argue it remains as sharp today as then. Others may disagree. To respect the possibly deceased or presently living, some names of persons who would not be known to the reader have been changed. To all persons who are subject of my narrative, I have endeavored to respect the sanctity of your memory or the privacy of your present. Scoundrels, however, may not be spared such luxury or consideration.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah,
That's a great way to preface the book for sure. Was there
yeah.
any like memory that you were writing down that you needed to call the maybe someone else that was there that witnessed it to just get, I don't know, another angle of it or maybe some dialogue that you had forgotten about?
Not that I can recall. I don't think so. You see, this book was written, the copyright on this book is 1981.
Oh wow,
That
okay.
was a year after Heatwave. And I basically sat down and wrote that in 3 days.
Okay, so
Now,
you captured this like almost immediately then.
yeah, the
Yeah,
zeitgeist
yeah.
was still on fire.
Right.
Now, having read the book a few times, and having thought about where the book would go and where the story ended off, because the story ends off just at the press conference announcing the bands, and we
Mm.
still have to put on a show.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, we haven't gotten past the press conference, and I'm not even at the press conference because of all of the conflict from the Strawberry Fields Festival 10 years before, with us hoodwinking the Ontario Provincial Police and the Ontario government to pull off Strawberry Fields. I stayed in the background until we had everything locked down.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting at home waiting for my assistant to come back from the thing with the tape recording of the press conference, and the tape recording of the press conference ends this book.
Ah, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
where does the book start off from?
It starts off with a scene that happened 3 days before the festival, where the investors storm my office and they want the backstage passes and all the parking passes, because unbeknownst to me, they have a sheet of paper with them that they're going to serve on me, making sure that neither me or any of my co-producers are allowed on the site.
Jeez.
So, of course, in the process of me avoiding giving them the passes, which are under my desk. I lure them into believing that I'm going to have to call up to the other house to get them sent down. And in fact, instead, I call 911 and say that I'm being held against my will, and the warehouse is stormed by fucking police who come in, and I start going, I called you. These men need to be arrested. And
Oh
here you
my
got
God.
lawyers and accountants and stockbrokers, about 15 of them in there having
Yeah.
a having a banana. So one of them came over and served me with this paper, which I didn't even look at. And the cop said, what do you want to do? You want these people arrested? And I said, no, I want them out of my office. That's good enough for now. So they all gone. They were gone. So the next morning, the park owner calls me. The show's 2 days away. And he says, John, I just got a call from so-and-so that you've been served papers that you're not allowed on their site. And they've got John Morris going to produce the show. I said, oh, really? Well, let me look at this paper. So I look at it, and he goes, look, he said, I'm not letting anyone else produce the show. He said, I don't know who John Morris is, and I know who these guys are, and they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. So he said, are you guys still on board? Are you all right? And I go, yeah, we're all ready to go. So he calls them up and he goes, here's the deal. If Brower's not producing the show, I'm locking the gates. There's no show. Okay. Now these guys have $1,400,000 on the line already. So that
God,
was
yeah.
not a phone call they wanted.
Like show's
So
gotta
of course,
happen, guys.
yeah, once I found that out, of course, they were all banned and locked out from the site.
Wow.
And I won't give anything more away. But I
Yeah,
mean, the
yeah.
second book, by the way, is called The Battle for Heatwave, because that's what it was. It was a battle.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Do you have any desire to have it maybe like interpreted into a dramatic movie of some kind
Oh,
or
it would make a great streaming series. Absolutely. It
yeah,
would.
yeah.
But
Yeah, you
what
could
we're
easily do
working
that as
on,
like a TV series for sure.
yeah, well, whatever. I don't think there's TV anymore. It's all
Well,
Netflix or something.
yeah.
But what we're really working on right now is the Rock War Peace, which is what happened with John Lennon and I after the rock and roll revival.
Mm,
Because you would go, okay, well, that was great. Did you ever see Lennon again? Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We tried to put on a peace festival in the middle of the Vietnam War. Was that a wake up call?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
happened after Revival 69? Now that you've done this festival, you've brought Lennon in, you guys have gotten a chance to speak with each other and now sort of know each other on this level of working together. How did your relationship blossom beyond that? Like you said, you're working on a festival together, but
Well,
like what else?
it blossomed over a big, huge ball of hash about this big because I
Oh, the
had
only
gone
thing
to,
that brings people together is
yeah, I had gone to Istanbul to buy sheepskin coats in November because
nice.
I was, of course, partners with the two Eaton brothers, the young ones, and sheepskin coats were the hottest thing in the world. And they said, if you can go over and get 500 or more sheepskin coats, we'll put them in all the big stores across the country. So, of course, we get to Istanbul and find out that, yeah, there's lots of sheepskin coat, but they were all paid for last year. If you want coats, you pay for them now and you can have them next year. So that became a disaster. And, we quickly realized that maybe we could buy some coats in the bazaar for retail tourist prices. So we bought a few and then decided, well, why don't we buy some hash and take that back and that'll cover all the expenses. And
Yeah.
the movie Midnight Express had not come out. That was 4 years later. When I saw that movie at TIFF, I got cold sweats, realizing how close I came. Okay. So, I arrived and I had a suit and tie with me and not really that long hair. The guy that was with me had long hair. He had a sheepskin coat. He was nuts. So I said, we'll fly separately. You fly, you this, I'll do that. I have a tie on. I'll strap it on. I strapped on like 3 kilos. And so we arrive in London and he gets through and I go to my guy and the guy goes, passport, give us your health card then. Okay. Well, I didn't have my health card. I couldn't find it. So he goes,
Yeah.
all right, just go over there, little cubicle, take your shirt off, let him have a look at your doculations. If I took my shirt off, the person there either would be a hash smoker and I'd make a deal and give him some, or
Yeah,
I was going
yeah.
to jail.
Oh
So
yeah.
then I saw my friend waving the health cards. So I said to the guy, listen, that man out there works for me. Could he come in here, please, with the health cards? So Peter comes in looking like the furry freak brother.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
guy
yeah.
had the loudest voice in the world.
This
Let
guy
that man
works
in
with
there.
me.
Let that man in, right? I'm figuring, we are such a heat score. So
Uh,
anyway, let's hit the health card. Let's just go. I said to Peter, I can't get on a flight to Toronto right now. I can't. It was November. It was cold. Our luggage on the plane. I have nothing now. Give me that coat, the other sheepskin coat off.
yeah.
So I go get in a cab and I go to, I need a hotel. Take me to a hotel room. The guy goes, a Playboy Club just opened up. You want to go there? They go to a hotel. I said, okay, let's go to the Playboy Club. So I go to the Playboy Club, get a room, get a big steak, crash, wake up in the morning and thought I was in a barn. Ash stunk so bad. So I roll up a big ball of it and I call Apple because Lennon had said, you know our number. I said, I'm in London. I'm going to call
Yeah.
John Lennon.
Yeah.
So long story, I went over to John's and came in wearing the sheepskin coat, looking very hip, and gave me and rolled this across the desk. And so I told him I'd just come from Istanbul. And he probably thought I was a smuggler. Anyway, I was. So picked it up and smells it. And he goes, look, Yoko, a Turkish golf ball. So we smoked some. And that's when he played for me the Rock and Roll Revival record.
Oh
And
wow.
it came on in Kim Fowley's voice with, ladies and gentlemen, Toronto, Brower Walker present the Plastic Ono Band. It heard my name on this record, and I
Wow.
smoked this hash. I thought I was going to fall over and faint. It was like, oh my God, I had to hold on to
Yeah.
a table. And
That's
John was
sensory
laughing and looked
overload
at
at
me.
that point.
Yeah. So that's when we started talking about doing a big festival the following summer for peace. And so over some great Turkish hash, well, there you go. There's miracles happen.
Yeah, no doubt. Like that just must have been such a trippy experience to just be like I'm trying to think of like what my equivalent would be like if I was like sitting down and like I don't know. I'm because I love comedy, so it's like if like Eddie Murphy or Dave Chappelle passed me a blunt or like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
somebody that you idolize in that field sitting around and shooting the shit. Like I can't fathom those experiences and those conversations that you guys must have been having in London of all places too, like right where he feels at home to
Right,
bring it
right
around to
in
the word home.
Apple, right in Apple Records, exactly.
Wow.
So of course now I still have all this hash, right? And
Yeah.
I said, no, no, I'm not going to Toronto with this hash. So I stayed there another 2 days, going around Piccadilly Circus and Carnaby Street, trading chunks of hash for clothes and shoes and anything else.
Yeah.
Okay. And I bought like 3 suitcases and came back with like a wardrobe for the next 3 years and gifts
Jeez.
for people. And sure enough, when I came through, they had dog out there and they went through everything. They ripped me apart. They made me take right down to my underwear because probably my friend Peter had been back in Toronto going, oh, yeah, John's coming in a few days, man. We got all this hash.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. This
Yeah,
kid,
yeah.
yeah, this
Just
guy's mouth was like, one of those flapping toys.
yeah, they had him
So I was
tapped.
smart to get rid of all that stuff and give this nice big ball of it to John and Yoko.
Now it's amazing too that it like with weed being legalized in Canada is you can literally fly within Canada with like any amount of weed on you and they're not going to say anything. Like you could
No.
fly from Vancouver to, St. John and totally fine with a big bag of weed on you.
You have anything to check? Yes, I do. 50 kilos in
Yeah.
here and
And they go,
25
"All
kilos
right,
in there.
man, smoke
Yeah.
on."
All right. Yeah.
Oh God, that's so funny. When can people expect your second book to come out? You were saying.
It's going to be ready for this holiday season. I think it'll be, like I have these printed by Amazon. Amazon
Yeah.
are the best people in the entire world. You send them your sheets and your plate, your print. If somebody wants to order one of these, they run one for them. They just push a
Wow.
button. If I want to order 50 or 100 of them, they run them for me, and they give these to me for like $2 or $3,
Wow, that's
and
amazing.
they only sell them for 14. But if you're the author, you can buy promotional copies.
Oh.
So yeah, it's a really beautiful thing, and you get this book on Kindle for free. I don't even know if people have Kindle anymore, but it's free on Kindle
Yeah, have
because
you done
when
an
you put,
audiobook?
I have not done an audiobook. That is the next thing that I'm looking at.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was gonna say if you read the audiobook, that would be amazing to like just hear it, direct from the horse's mouth in a way.
I wouldn't let anybody else read it because
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right. I will bring the richness to the parts of the story, and I do pretty good, acting
Yeah.
out the energy of that story at that time.
There was I'm trying to remember what book it was, but it was like somebody where it did all the events happened to them and they're reading the audiobook of whatever, but it was almost like a podcast where they would be reading along in the book and then they would go off on a tangent for a second, like, oh, and that reminds me of like blah 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 when this happened and this happened, this happened. Anyways, back to and they would go back to reading the rest of the story. I'm like, you wouldn't really get that with just reading the book unless you were reading from I think Robert Greene is an author who utilizes the margins a lot to have context added to what the rest of the story is. But most biographies and whatnot just read it directly. Here's what happened, You don't get
Well,
that
that's very
chance.
interesting. I'd never thought of that or heard of that.
Mm.
So this is kind of a new field for me, which is I love at my age jumping out into new things. I've done that, like about every 20 years. But this is exciting to hear what other people that have been in the space for some time successfully are doing and how that's worked.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. It's always good to learn from what everybody else is doing too and adapt it in your own way. I'm going to share again, just for the people that are watching on YouTube here, the book is called Count Whip and See Meets the Ugly Canadians, the Heatwave Trilogy Book 1. You can get that on Amazon. That link will be in the description below. Go to revival69.com or chapmanproductions.ca where you can learn more about the Revival 69 film and find out where to watch it. As we were saying, Crave and Apple. It's going to be right there. It's called Revival 69, the concert that rocked the world. And then go follow John's stories on TikTok. It's Rock and Roll Stories, Johnny Brower. And again, that link will be down in the description below where you can hear all of these amazing stories and interactions that John's had over the years with the world of rock and roll.
Now, the latest postings on TikTok are the story of John and I trying to do the Peace Festival.
Oh, amazing.
And yeah, and I'm getting into probably just the point where we finished meeting with him in Denmark, where he's had all his hair cut off, and I hear about it the day before because it's a Auerberg, Denmark, which is about as remote as Grafton, Ontario, where I am. Um, and we're at the hotel, Richie York and I, and Anthony Fossil, of course.
Wow.
And the maitre d' comes up to us at the dinner table and he goes, Mr. Brower, could you sign the chip for the barber? And I go, what? He goes, Mr. Lennon ordered the barber to come out to the house where they're staying this morning and they cut everyone's hair. And so he said, charge it to your room because I was paying for everything. I mean. And I said, well, that's okay, fine, no problem. But where's the barber? And he points to this young woman over by the stand. So I said, well, we asked her to come over here, please. So she comes over and tells us about going out there. And they showed her a picture of Mia Farrow, who had just had all her hair cut off.
Yeah.
And they wanted their hair cut like that. John was definitely on a trip with that story, but I'll save that for for that story. But so I said, look, because we had that morning we'd been told that John had been on a spaceship and they showed me a floating city in this guy's hotel room there. And I mean, you'll hear all this on my TikTok. But
Okay. Yeah.
so I said, look, I said, do you see what's going on? They're trying to freak us out. They want us to know they got their haircut, right? I said to the girl, can you cut 3 more haircuts right now? I said, let's get our hair cut off. We'll freak them out. We'll show up there with no hair.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah.
goes, yeah, I can do it. So we go down to Anthony's room and they cut all my hair off like Mia Farrow. And then Richie York and Anthony Bosler look at me and go, we're not going to do it.
Oh, they backed out. No.
We go out there the next day and
Uh,
I've got my hair cut off. And John looks at me and he goes, you've had your hair cut off. I said, yeah, I heard it's the hip thing. And he goes, we did it too. And I realized they weren't intending for me to know anything. They were just charging it to the room. They
that's so
probably didn't
funny.
even think I would know that.
Yeah.
So I came back cursed with my hair all cut off for no
Yeah.
good reason at all. Anyway, they're more stories and they're really fun. And I love telling them.
Yeah, no, and you should keep telling them too. I think you're gonna eventually crack into an even bigger market than what the film success has maybe offered you. And I really think that there's much more here to be explored for sure.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
we'll explore some of it together, Mr. Johnny.
Welcome back anytime. Come back. We'll promote book number 2 as soon as that's out.
Absolutely. Well, I'm
All
going to
right.
get you book number 1
Yes,
so
I'll have
you'll
to
know
get
what
that.
we're dealing with.
And then I'll
Absolutely.
be really pushing you to put the book out.
Oh, yeah.
All right, John. It's always a pleasure talking with you. Hope you have a great rest of your
My
night.
pleasure, Johnny. All the best.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.